The topic of Chapter 13 is Live Trace, and Illustrator's Live Trace feature allows you to automatically convert pixel-based imagery into vector-based artwork. And there's a couple of different approaches you might take. You might start with a continuous tone photograph. You can trace digital photographs if you like. That's not the common approach, and that's not an approach we're going to see in this chapter. Rather, we'll take a look at how you can trace Photoshop artwork, like these letters right here, and I'll come back to this illustration in just a moment. Or how you can start with traditional tools, such as pen and paper. Go ahead and scan in your artwork and then develop it inside of Illustrator, as in the case of this artwork right here. It's called VeryLargeFlag.ai. And this illustration is huge, by the way. It's 5 feet wide and 3 feet tall, so that we could actually output an enormous flag. And it's a piece of vector-based artwork, but it started off looking like this. I whipped together this initial sketch using a ballpoint pen and a piece of paper, and then I ultimately scanned it into Photoshop. We'll see how that entire process worked. And finally, I was able to develop this artwork into this flag art right there. So you can make some amazing progress using this Live Trace feature. Now, a lot of teachers, very early on when they're teaching Illustrator, they'll start off with Live Trace because it is a highly automated feature, and it does create path outlines for you. And it eliminates a lot of that manual labor associated with the pen tool and the other tools that we looked at in the fundamentals portion of the series. The reason I don't start with Live Trace is that it's not applicable to most of the artwork you create inside of Illustrator. For example, I've got this guy open here, pentoolcreature.ai. Remember, this is a final piece of artwork that we created back in Chapter 9 in the Fundamentals series. And there's just no way that you're going to create this artwork using Live Trace. For one thing, we have these incredibly smooth path outlines, so some very precise curves. We also have these uniform strokes. We have these differently colored areas. This is absolutely a piece of pen tool art. You're not going to get anything like this using the Live Trace feature. However, for a piece of artwork like this, where we're trying to simulate real-world tools and we're not interested in creating a lot of different path outlines, that is, we're not trying to distinguish different areas of color using strokes and the like, we just have a few different fill colors going on. This kind of artwork is absolutely ideally suited to Live Trace. I need to tell you though, even though this is an automated feature, and you'll see how splendidly it works in just a moment, that does not mean it creates automatic artwork. This piece of art that we're looking at right now took me several hours to create. And so I don't want you to think that Live Trace creates absolute pieces of art lickety-split. That's not the way it works. Anyway, we'll see this one shortly. Let's go back to the letters for starters here. And the name of this file is handdrawn-characters.ai. And these are a series of brushstrokes that I created inside Photoshop once again using a Wacom tablet. Then I went ahead and placed the image into Illustrator by going up to the File menu and choosing the Place command. Or if you loaded D keys, you've got a keyboard shortcut of Control-Alt-D, Command-Option-D on the Mac. However, I've already done this in advance inside of this file. So if you go over to the Layers panel, you'll see a layer called Image. If you twirl it open, therein is the linked image, which is called alphabet.psd. I'm going to go ahead and meatball it to select it. And then, in order to trace these characters, and you may very well wonder, well, why didn't I draw these characters inside of Illustrator in the first place? Why did I create them in Photoshop and now I'm going to trace them in Illustrator? For the simple reason that I drew these characters years ago, and I'm too lazy to go back at Illustrator and redraw them right now, because that would take an awful lot of time, whereas, as you'll see, tracing them happens very quickly. Now I'll go up to the Live Trace button, which is now available to me in the control panel, and I should also show you, by the way, that here in the control panel, you can see not only the name of the linked file, but you can also see its resolution. So in this case, the resolution is 72 pixels per inch, a very low resolution file. It's actually a fairly large file though. This illustration measures about 22 inches wide, about 16 inches tall. So we've got a lot of pixels available to us. It's just that the resolution is set quite low, and Illustrator likes this. Illustrator rewards you when you work with low resolution files by not bugging you. Basically, it gives you very fast results, and it doesn't deliver any alert messages. As you'll see, you'll get a warning if you work with high resolution art. However, you're going to get better results with high resolution art as well. But for now, we're going to start low, and then I'll go over to this Live Trace button, and all I have to do is click on it. And bang, Illustrator goes ahead and traces the artwork, and it's done. And it's actually converted the image to a Live Trace object so that I can edit my tracing settings anytime I like. Now, I want you to see that by default, Illustrator goes ahead and generates a black and white tracing. So we don't have any of the colors we had a moment ago. And I've lost a line of type. So I'll go ahead and press Control-Z or Command-Z on a Mac so you can see what I'm talking about. That'll reinstate my original multicolor image here. And you can see that this orange line of type went away, as did this yellow background. And that's because those colors are closer to white than they are to black. But you can change that. You can force Illustrator to trace those elements. I'll press Control-Shift-Z or Command-Shift-Z to redo the tracing. And then notice up here inside the control panel, there's this threshold value. And if you hover over it, it says this is the value used to separate black from white. All pixels lighter are converted to white. All pixels darker are converted to black. Well, a threshold setting of 128 is medium gray. So 0 is black, 255 is white. This is the world of luminance inside of Photoshop. And so if you want to trace lighter colors with black, then you need to increase that threshold value. And I'm going to go ahead and set the threshold to 200 and then press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac. And that goes ahead and traces the orange text without tracing the yellow background behind the numbers. And we get this nice black and white rendering. So that's the simplest way to trace inside of Illustrator. I'll show you 3 more ways to apply the Live Trace feature in the next exercise.